This video is going to be on how to do increases. There's two basic increases out there. The first increase is what you would use for a sweater. As you can see here, you have your increases going in either side of your sleeve, and it would show right here. Where's it at? Sleeve. Increase 1 stitch each side every 7 rows 4 times, or whichever the pattern calls for. The other increase is called a make one, and that's what you would do if you're going to do a gusset in a mitten or a pair of wrist warmers like I have here. Here's where it would be in the wrist warmers. It doesn't show much because that's the way it's designed. Here's how it's written. We're going to start working a little bit with written patterns. The first one we're going to do would be the basic increase that you would use on a sleeve. So I've started here. The first half I've already done. Work 4 rows and garter stitch after you cast on 12 stitches. And then you do rows 1 through 6 in stockinette. So there's my cast on. There's the 4 rows of garter, and there's the 6 rows of stockinette. So the next row says increase 1 stitch each side every 2 rows 4 times. I'm going to show 2 different ways to do it. I like to do mine on the 2nd stitch. I always like to leave the 1st stitch available as a guide for sewing or for seaming. You would knit in the front of the stitch and do goal post. That's what I call it when you twist it this way. Go in the back half of the loop of that same stitch, and you have 2 stitches where you originally had 1. I'll move this up out of the way. And then you would knit across to the 2nd to the last stitch. I'm going to go this part a little quicker because we've already covered knitting and we've covered purling. So those I'm not going to really do a lot with. Okay, so here's the other increase. You would go in the front of your stitch, yarn over. Do not take this off. Do goal post instead. This helps kind of stretch the stitch. Go in the back half of the same stitch, yarn over, pull it through. So there's your increase, and then knit your last stitch. Okay, then roll 8 says purl across. So we're going to turn our work and purl across. And since we've already covered this quite a bit, we won't go into too much detail, but you would knit purl every single stitch, even the increased stitches. That's how you get the size of the sleeve to slowly expand to compensate for the wider width of your upper arm versus your wrist. Just about at the end. As you see, whether you're right-handed or left-handed, each hand has a job or a function to do. So you'd have to learn how to use both hands anyway, whether you do it on the right-handed way or the left-handed way. But as you see here, I still have that 1 stitch going to the side here while my increase is over here. Now I'm going to do an increase in the middle, because sometimes you have to do increases after you do several stitches. So I'm just going to do 1 quickie in the middle here to show you that they can be done in the middle. So you'd go in the front side, do your goal post, go in the back of the same stitch, yarn over, pull it through, and then you would finish however many stitches they want you to do. I'll do another one here. On the first stitch, do your goal post, the back half of the stitch, and then do your last 4 stitches. That's how you would do it if you had to do them in the middle of your work. But now when you do these, you're going to see these little bumps that pop up. There's one here. There's one here from the previous row. That's the only downside to doing a standard increase. You get those little bumps on the front of your work. In most cases, the bumps don't really make a lot of difference. You can use that as a purl stitch if you need to. Some patterns that I make, I turn that into a purl stitch. It's just one of the little things that I like to do. Let's go ahead and get to the end here, and I will show you the other side increase, the one that's done quite a bit. Just about there. Okay, now the other way you do an increase 1 stitch each side is, instead of doing it on the 2nd stitch like I did, you could do it in the 1st stitch. Knit in the front, do your goal post, knit in the back loop of that same stitch, and you can do your increase there. Either way is perfectly fine, whichever you're most comfortable with. I just like to have a even roll of stitches going up either side of my sleeve. It's just something that I prefer. But when you get to the other end, you do the same thing. Let me get over here to the other side. Each time I do this, I'm adding stitches. So what used to be 12 stitches is now 16. Okay, we do it again. Knit in the front, do our goal post, knit in the back, yarn over, and finish it. So you can see there it puts the purl or the bump stitch near the edges, but it does the same thing. You can also see the increases we did here and here, but like I said, that's only if your pattern requires it. Now the other one we're going to do is the one that is like a thumb gusset or some kind of a decorative increase you do in the middle of a garment. And this is how this one would read. This is where we do what's called a make one instead of the increase. A make one is done between stitches, not through a stitch. And you use stitch markers. There are several different types of stitch markers on the market. There's the standard rings. There's split rings, which I don't have a sample of. The little safety pins, a lot of people like using the safety pins. This one's my favorite because you can actually take it off and put it back on in different locations. And in a pinch, if you don't have one, you can always make a little overhand knotted loop out of a piece of yarn. They all work just as well. It's just personal preference more than anything else. Okay, so this starts the same. Cast on 12 stitches, which we did. Work 4 rows of garter, which is knit every row for 4 times. Then rows 1 through 6, you work in stockinette, which is knit a row, purl a row, knit a row, purl a row. Now we're going to do our first increase. Here it says K1, which means knit 4. PM stands for place marker. M1 is make 1 stitch. K2 would be knit 2, make 1, place marker, knit to the end. So let's do that. We're going to knit 4. Okay, now it says place the marker, so you just set a marker over your needle. Now you're going to make one. Now the make one is done in these horizontal bars between the stitches instead of on the actual stitch. So you pick it up with your needle, place it on your left hand needle, and you knit through the back loop. And that causes that little stitch, I don't know if you can see it real well, but it twists, this little twist in it. And that keeps it from making a bigger hole. And then it says knit 2. Now we're going to make the opposite one because one make one goes one direction, the other make one can go the other direction. So if you're doing a thumb and a mitten, you kind of want one to go one way and one to go the other. Otherwise you get this little bit different and uneven look. So the other make one is when you pick it up, put on the needle the other direction, and knit through the front loop. That causes it to twist the opposite direction. Oh, and then you place a marker. And then it says knit to the end. So now we're going to knit to the end. And each time you do this, you'll get more and more stitches between your markers. Okay, now it says purl across, slipping markers as you go. You can't really take the marker off the needle in this position unless you're using the one that's like a safety pin. Then you can pop it open and pull it off. To get these markers off, I'm purling so we don't have to go over this. Move that up a bit. When you get to the marker, you just slide it from one needle to the next. Then you knit all the stitches in between. I'm going to slip the other marker and knit to the purl, to the end. If I said knit, it should have been purl. Okay, now the next row says knit 4, slip the marker, make 1, knit 4, make it 1, and slip the marker. So there's 4 right in between your markers here. So these are the 4 we're going to knit, and we're going to make 1 on either side of your markers. So let's go over to the marker. Now you need to practice this because this will take a little bit of practice. You should be a lot more comfortable knitting and purling. Slide your marker, pick up, place on your left hand needle so you have the long part of the stitch in front, and you're going to knit through the back loop. Now if you have trouble getting in that back loop, which I do once in a while, I cheat. I'll go like this and then go around the needle. Just kind of like go around the needle like that, and that'll put you on the back side. So you just put the needle in and go around, and that's a way to get to the back loop if you cannot get in the back loop this way. Most of the time on tiny needles, I have to go around the needle. I cannot put it in the back loop, just not my thing. Okay, there's my knit 4. Now I'm going to make one. This will be the opposite one. So instead of putting it on this way, so the long part of the stitch is in the front, you put it on the other way. So now the long part of the stitch is in the back. And if you accidentally knit it the wrong way, you get a big hole. And you definitely don't want the big hole. That's how you know you've knitted in the wrong front or back. In this case, I put it on backwards. It's this way, and you knit in the front of the loop. Slip your marker, knit to the end. We'll do that one more time, and I'll show you the two different of these make one increases. Now when you do the other increase where you knit in the front and back loop of the same stitch, there's no left or right. It's just the same no matter when you do it. So that one makes that one a little bit easier to remember. This is the one that you have to stop and think if you definitely want it to go different directions. If you want them all to go the same direction, you do them all the same way. Even if you did both directions the same, it doesn't really show that much on a pair of mittens. It's personal preference. Lately I've just been doing the same make one on both sides of my mitten thumb. Okay, we'll do it one last time. So we knit the original 4. Now we're going to slip the marker, and we're going to make the first lean, the one on the right side. We're going to go to the front of the needle, so you got the long part of the stitch in front, knit in the back loop, knit the middle 6, because now each time we do it, we're going to add 2 stitches. Okay, now we're going to make one go in the other direction, so we're going to pick it up and put it on the needle this way. So now the long part of the stitch is on the back of your work instead of the front, and you're going to knit through the front loop. Slip your marker, and finish it off just like you normally would. And then you just keep going depending on your pattern. So if you look here, on this side, this goes even this way, and all your additions are coming here. Let me enlarge this a little bit here, but keep it under the light. Okay. When we twisted this direction, you can see this stitch continues off this way, and all of our additional stitches are here. When we twisted the other direction, this one kept going this way, and you can see all the new stitches are here. So it gives you a little bit nicer look. When you do both go in the same direction, one side lays very nice, as you can see how nice it lays, but the other side seems to get a little bit of a wonky hole, as you can see along there. If I had done this side the way I had done this side, I would not have had that wonky hole. But you live and learn. Have a good day.